And with that, we're going to turn to Mei Lam, who's going to talk to us about API harmonization. We've heard a bit about fast payment systems, and I know that's an important aspect there. So for steps towards harmonization of APIs, Mei Lam, CIO of the Australia Payments Plus and chair of the advisory board for EPA.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So thanks, IF, for having me. And also, I would like to introduce you to Mika von Hartmann as well. He's the Thailand ambassador of our Emerging Payment Association in Asia. So, hi, Mika. So Mika is a renowned digital payments expert who has intimate knowledge and experiences, especially in the Southeast Asia. And I would like to dedicate this panel discussion more to the Asia-Pacific region of how we fulfilled the cross-border payments in terms of what G20 leaders have endorsed a roadmap on. So before we start, I just want to acknowledge that so much has been accomplished since the endorsement in 2020, and through the quantitative targets that has been established to meet the roadmap ambitions on achieving cheaper, faster, more transparent, more accessible cross-border payments. I think for the region in the Asia-Pacific, I would like to call out, especially in the accessibility and also the trust element as well. There are a set of mega trends that we've seen shaping the region. These are the 5 drivers of mega trends, including the shifting of economic power, technological advancement, population change, environmental shift in the region, and also changing the individual sentiments and values towards all the innovation and when it comes to payment in terms of the experiences as well. So these are the set of very powerful forces that are transforming the region, impacting the businesses, society, economies, and culture and the personal lives. What we've already heard from the previous speakers talking about a different region in terms of the innovation and the problem what we want to solve. And also, I would like to highlight that is actually quite interesting of what we see in the region, which through this fireside chat with Mika, we will unpack more. So this discussion is on the 3rd themes of work. So under the FSB, in terms of prioritization plan, there are 3 themes of interconnected priorities. So we heard from the previous speakers on the PI, the payment system interoperability and accessibility. We talked a little bit on the legal, regulatory, and supervisor framework. And this one is on the 3rd one, the cross-border data exchange and the message standards. So API, the application program interface harmonization, with many of the technologies and the product leaders in the room that understand how it brings the significant efficiency for the growth and the businesses and the services. So I probably don't need to explain further, but what the challenges today that we're seeing is that the fragmentation of API standards, the principles, the processes, and also the collaboration, which is significantly hindering the full potential of APIs. So in the next 30 minutes that we will want to look at what is the opportunity that we're seeing, what are the current challenges, and what are the priorities from different pillars of the communities, whether you are in the government, in the bank, non-bank, businesses, and the individual disruptors, that there's opportunity to call to action. So Mika, I would like to turn to you in terms of the first one that would like to see your insights of what are the top 3 cross-border payment innovation that are quite uniquely designed in the Asia-Pacific region that you can share with us.
Yeah, so what I wanted to share was that in ASEAN or the Asian region, there is obviously quite a lot of cross-border, travel, and there's a lot of migrant workers who move to work to another country. For example, I'm living in Thailand for all my life here, so I'm gonna give sort of a bit of a Thai perspective, but also an Asian perspective at the same time. So, like we have, Malaysians are about 4.5 million Malaysians come over to Thailand each year as tourists, and then we have close to 4 million migrant workers working here in Thailand right now. So from Cambodia, from Myanmar, obviously. So the central banks, especially in Thailand, the Bank of Thailand has been focusing to see that what sort of corridors can we sort of start initiating the real instant payment cross-border networks. So Thailand launched in 2016 Prompt Pay instant payment system, and it has been sort of a top-down method that basically the central bank, mandating it to the banks here to launch that, and having that really to widely now we have over 70 million people using these instant payment systems. But going cross-border obviously is opening up new challenges. And so what Thailand has launched it was in April 2021, where Thailand was the first to launch the real-time cross-border transfer service, which was initially started from peer-to-peer payments. And that was obviously one of the first in the world innovative initiative that was developed. And so that has also won an award in 2022 from the central banking publication that was the initiative of the year. So what we see is that the central banks here in ASEAN, in these countries, are trying to enable to lower the cost for the tourists, also to the migrant workers in transferring money, and also enabling to we have a lot more clarity in how much they are charged for these transactions. Because here we have both through banks, through other service providers, and even what we call underground payment transfer here, where a lot of fees are charged. And in the end, these migrants, when they transfer funds back to their family, like in Cambodia or Myanmar, for example, they basically are hardly left with any money at the end on the receiver's side. So these are the new initiatives that we see here in especially Thailand and also in ASEAN that are trying to push.
Thanks, Mika. So it sounds like one of the key success factor is the top-down central banks perspective. So it would be good to understand since the ASEAN, the central bank, the 5 countries, which is Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, and Singapore, have signed the MOU back in 2022. What are the significant milestones that you've seen the market progress from that MOU?
Yeah, initially it was sort of really, sort of a bilateral focus. When Thailand did with Singapore, it was very bilateral. And obviously it was the first case. It was quite difficult, with all the legal complications and each side having different processes in handling, for example, fraud and AML screening. So for example, in the Prompt Pay Now connectivity, each side handles it in a different way. So when the ASEAN, they signed up the MOU, basically it was enabling more countries to understand the complexities involved with doing this cross-border real-time payments, and also to share best methods, best practices, and to understand, how they can seem more seamless to enable it. And from that, obviously now we see that more countries, basically it has about 13 different connectivities now in ASEAN. Some are one way, some are bilateral, and some are just P2P initial stage, and some are now pay to merchant. And we see that growth in the ASEAN, and it's definitely, but it's more sort of still a bilateral agreement between each country. So there are still some complexities involved with that, definitely.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that you kind of touch on the bilateral can be one of the friction. So let's come back in terms of from the API harmonization perspective. API can be a lot of different things. It can be from the integration of the products, from the services from third party, payment initiations, settlements, all sort of different things. So let's just hone into what you've seen in terms of the journey, the most friction that needs most of the intervention of all sort of different parties to do that. So can you share with some of the insight that you've seen that you think that would be a kind of like the quick win that we can hone in and need the critical mass and everyone should be focusing on?
Yeah, so maybe I can touch on two subjects. One, for example, is the country-specific QR code. So each country, the central bank obviously is enabling QR codes. QR code payments here is the norm nowadays. Everywhere you go, you just say scan to pay, like here in Thailand, and virtually every merchant is enabled. But the situation that causes complexities in doing, like, for a payment service provider who's going to connect, all the countries in ASEAN, or most of let's take the top 5 first, for example, the country-specific QR code, which tag they will use for that wallet or for the country-specific wallets is not the same. So this is an issue that for if you're going to implement in Thailand, you'll need to understand, how the structure of the QR code and which tag is assigned to which wallet or which payment service. If you go to another country, it might be slightly different, using a different tag. So this is something that it's not standardized in the region as such, but there's a standard structure. But that then you need to understand that, okay, in which country which tag will be enabled. So that is a complication, sort of a friction point. Another thing that I've noticed is the friction point is even though the ISO 20022 message format is a structured format, but that is also not standardized. Let's say harmonized, used regionally. So in one country, they might use some features and functions of that structure, and some countries they might use it in a different way. So that means, like the same as the QR code I was mentioning previously, it definitely has frictions and complications to be able to handle. And going back to what I discussed a bit, on the prompt pay and the pay now, how to handle fraud and screening of the transactions is different also. So that causes complexities, once you integrate through the API and try to make it more seamless.
Thank you. Do you think that's back that the point about the fraud protection and things? Do you think it's possible that to embed the kind of like the confirmation of payee into the API layer? If so,
Yeah,
what would be the secret ingredient or the things that we need to the coalition of willing to come together?
Yeah, that is something that is something key. I mean, for example, for the Thailand Prem Pay to the Pay Now integration, you will see the receiver's name before you do the payment. I mean, even though there's a proxy layer in Thailand, there's a proxy layer. In Singapore, it's the same. So when you transfer, you just really need to know initially when you do the transaction that you know the phone number. But in the end, it'll actually, let's say, for example, in Thailand, when you transfer to Singapore, you'll actually see the receiver's name. So that is also, ensuring that you're transferring to the correct person. And plus also, what they're doing right now still is having transaction limits. So that is also controlling that, they're not currently accepting for the peer-to-peer to very high transaction amounts because they want to keep it in control. And as you know, all around ASEAN itself, we have had the problem of a lot of scams and stuff like that. So there's a lot of more control from on the bank side before going to that stage now that you make sure that you're transferring to the correct person or the intended recipient.
Yeah, thank you. So in the region that we've seen that one of the things that a lot of the fintech or the pay tech come to the markets, the problem they're trying to solve is a financial inclusion. So there's a lot of different small businesses, individual businesses, and a lot of small players in the regions. So having a sustainability business model is instrumental. But when we look at how the costs are passed on different fees of things, what are the challenges you see that in the markets that again that you can share with us, and what is a possible opportunity that we can call on everyone to be more collaborate on that front too?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because each country, the central bank has different different regulations and different viewpoints on payments. Like for example, here in Thailand, the central Bank of Thailand is quite strict on accepting new players, startups, or even those who don't have any real customer bases, but they have an idea to connect. And so it's very tough in some countries, like for example in Thailand. In Singapore, obviously Singapore is a bit of a more open the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, is more open, viewpoint and more open for innovation. Not in given that, I'm not saying that Thailand isn't open for innovation, but it's more like a top-down method of running the business, where in Singapore, maybe it's a bit more, from the business side upwards to innovate. Now, what we are seeing in some countries is that the terms and conditions to existing players like the banks themselves and for startups is not the same. And sometimes the startups or these new small players who want to get in the space they can't connect directly, for example, into the instant payment rails. So they need to go through a sponsor bank. So obviously in that method, they are charged a fee, a higher fee than if they would go direct. And so this basically means that they are on a less competitive playing field to get in. So that's what I see as some of the effects. And then some countries obviously they're trying to develop the sandbox. So what we see in Singapore and also here in Thailand, the central banks have developed the sandboxes, but the terms and conditions for startups and also for the existing incumbents like the banks is not the same. The startups are more viewed as high risk, high security, and longer time that they need to test in the sandbox before they can exit and go to a commercial sense. So in this sense, it's different countries are managing it differently. Some countries are more restrictive and more careful and want to be insured, but in some countries are more open for innovation. So I think you need to sort of, if you come into the market, sort of need to pick and choose a bit, where you want to go. But I think you need to, anyway, you need to have, a lot of discussions with the central banks to, to prove yourself that you have processes that you manage the risk part, which obviously most central banks are really, worried about.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point about having the sandbox. I think that will bring a lot more developer experience, because I think that from the innovation perspective, the collaboration, we can say this is the framework, this is a principle, this is a guardrail, but without the collaboration with the developer, it's actually quite hard to achieve. So just time chat, probably one more question, if it's okay.
I think we're coming very close to the end time. So May and Mika, thank you very much. There's a lot of focus, attention, and hope and excitement around instant and fast payment system interlinking, and getting those API standards and all of the other issues that you talked about are essential. So thank you so much for joining us today. And